In the mid part of my life, I woke to find myself in a dark wood, writes Dante in the Divine Comedy, indeed beginning a quest that will lead to transformation and redemption. We have entered phase 2 of Discouraged to Willing, which is held within the theme of entering the dark woods of self-discovery, aka the unknown woods of self-discovery, and learning how to trust the mystery. So we're starting off with this first video, which is about trusting the mystery. But of course, as we're entering into this next phase in the mythological holding of these dark woods, it's super important that I share with you what actually the dark woods are and its sort of implications, right? So quite literally, we can imagine dark woods, but more symbolically, this is really the representation of the unknown. Remembering that image I showed you from Joe Dispenza's book, You Are the Placebo, to shift from the familiar self to the unfamiliar self. There's the traversing through the river of change, right? And that is what we're talking about, that gap between A and B. The river, the unknown woods, that is where we are now. So, really exciting video. I'm going to be speaking with you, obviously, about the dark woods, and we're going to go into some more themes about, towards the end, of how to actually trust the mystery, which is poetic and romantic and beautiful, however also entirely practical, because we are speaking about how do you let go of the old self in order to birth yourself anew. Super key. So let's hop in. Now, basically in myth, in fairy tales, in these classic stories, right, a journey through the dark woods is a common motif that we see. The hero or the main character kind of sets off on a quest through this perilous forest, right? Even Snow White getting cast out and she's freaking out. She's in these dark woods. It's all scary, right? And it's completely unknown. And they are initiated into this next phase in order to reach and fulfill their destiny. Helpers appear along the way, often in a different appearance than we'd expect, right? Be it fairies, good fairies, be it animal guides, be it the dwarves, right? And they're often cloaked in unlikely disguises. So an image, right? An image of the dark woods, an image of a helper. This is really potent because remember, the unconscious speaks in symbol. Our soul speaks in symbol. So in working with an image, be it of the dark woods, right? One steps into its latent meaning by deepening into its presentation as such. So the configuration of particulars is the disclosure of meaning. So Avens in 1980 noted, quote, "Images in their liberated mode are themselves embodiments of meaning, that they mean what they are and are what they mean." End quote. I like that. They mean what they are and they are what they mean. Let's look at that for the dark woods. They mean what they are. They are dark. It's woody, right? AKA dense, right? It's populated with unknown things. Tall trees, right? So there's a sense of a closing in, let's say. There's not so much of a vast open field where you can see kilometers in front of your eyes. No, there's an intentional step by step that's kind of a result of being in the dark woods. And they are what they mean. Okay? Dark woods. Really just trying to paint the picture here that it is supposed to be the unknown. It's supposed to be unfamiliar. And of course, there's this connotation when we say the dark woods of something kind of like scary. And that's also the point. Just think about a time in your life where you've entered into some sort of unknown phase, where you've really been propelled forward and you've had to learn how to actually trust the mystery. Or maybe you didn't trust the mystery And it ended up being more scary continuously. So, but in the very nature of it being unknown, we are immediately outside of our comfort zone. And what does that mean? Outside of comfort. It's supposed to be uncomfortable. I remember I had this realization a while back of realizing that I'd conceptualized like what outside of the comfort zone actually was. And it wasn't until I really was outside of my comfort zone in a more conscious way that I'd laughed and thought back to this time of how I'd romanticized this being outside of the comfort zone, when in actuality, being outside of the comfort zone was super uncomfortable and really hard, because I had no other reference points of how to chart these unknown territories. Like, I was the one with the machete carving out the path, right? So compassion to that. You know, it's easy to speak about a thing, right? But to actually be in it and be able to draw from your resources, your tools that you have, in order to, with as much grace as possible, traverse the unknown. Yeah, that's a whole other game. And all the stuff that we're talking about as part of Discouraged to Willing is essentially meaningless unless it is taken from concept and practiced in as embodied wisdom. And that requires time, effort, and of course, willingness. So even just by going through this process implicitly, willingness will be cultivated as you do the aligned actions, for example. So good job if you've been doing those. And if you haven't yet, but feel inspired to do so, do them. All good. This is also working in a non-linear fashion, so no stress there. A very specific part of the whole thing of the Dark Woods is that the so-called hero, right, the main character, whoever, enters into a phase where they have to cultivate discernment, right? They need to tell who is friend, who is foe. Is this the way that I need to go, or is that the way that I need to go? Because there ain't no path. Is this creature or animal or whoever that comes to me, are they here to help me, or are they here to trick me? And without this stimulus, without these tests and these challenges where you encounter the detractors, you encounter the enemies, quote unquote, but you also encounter the allies, this is what also implicitly cultivates discernment. So in a real life situation, we could say that you were in a long-term sort of job situation, you'd gotten really comfortable being there, but you just knew that you were holding yourself back, or there was a potential that you weren't fulfilling by staying there. And you haven't worked any other kind of job, like this has been your thing. So when you quit, you have literally entered the unknown woods. You've entered the dark woods. On one level, of course, it's multifaceted. You could be in the dark woods in one area of your life and not in the dark woods in another area of your life at a particular time. But just using this as the example, you enter the unknown woods because you don't have a reference point. You don't have a way shower being like, yeah, all good, you quit, but here's your next job, here you go. I mean, heck, maybe that might happen for you. Cool, you're in alignment, but perhaps the dark woods are coming for a different area of your life, let's say. So in the unknown woods, you've got to learn, how to discern which way to go. If you need new skills, if you are looking for another job actively, you've got to discern what's appropriate for you and what's not. Like, who's actually trying to help you to find a new job and who actually doesn't really care, and they're benefiting off your confusion and your doubt, and not actually helping you to empower yourself to get out of a situation that's quite heavy for you. No judgment there, but discernment, massive part of the gifts that emerge from entering into the phase of the unknown, the river of change, right? So according to myths, as summarized by Joseph Campbell, right, The Hero's Journey, each of us must travel the dark woods, let's say, travel through them at some point in our lives. So according to Native American myth, This road into the dark woods lies in the west, and as part of the cardinal directions, they of course each have different symbols and motifs and elements associated with them. But my understanding is that the west also represents the sunset. So that's also really interesting. So the Western Road, whilst it involves the trials, the tribulations, the ordeals, right, and of course abrupt life changes, it is nonetheless a road to be honored, because from this road, from this path, you gain massive amounts of wisdom and experience that is extremely valuable in order to live a life of substance. Like I was speaking about with attaining some degree of mastery, there ain't no mastery without challenge, similar thing. So James Hillman, who was the founder of archetypal psychology, his work was for sure influenced by Jung, but he took more of an approach of focusing on imagination rather than the unconscious. So he basically echoes this necessity to, embrace the darkness, so to speak, by arguing that this darkness, this unknown, is a vital period of one's life. And it comes and goes, right? It's not just you have one dark period, that's it. Some are longer, some are shorter, some are in particular areas of your life and not in others, right? But these periods of the darkness, of the unknown, they question the modern rigid narrative that holistic health, mental health, is only based on being in a state of happiness, right? That's actually not the case. Health is holistic. Health also means that you have to be able to have some resilience. If you were a limp sock, like, how is that healthy? Because you've had no trials, no tribulations. You're just this that's limp sock, right? How is that healthy? One thing could completely topple you over, right? Because really, when you think about it, what about the seasons of nature, right? What about winter? What about nighttime? What about the exhale? These are like micro, seasons a bit larger, but these are also correspondences which show us that darkness, it's part of life. It's a non-negotiable part of life. And the dark woods, this period of one's life, of being in the unknown, of being in the unfamiliar, of having to figure this thing out without a manual or a textbook, it reminds us that the seeds first germinate underground, right? They're in that darkness, they're in the earth mother's womb, right? And then they can spring up through the soil and reach towards the sun. But it starts there. That rebirth, right? It starts there. So myths of descent, right? Even Persephone going into the underworld, and rebirth connect the soul cycle to that of nature, as I've just said, right? Autumn's decay, winter's hibernation, and the slow greening and flourishing of color of spring, right? There's a beautiful story, as we're kind of speaking a bit more about myth today, about the bone woman. So I have this book that I've referred to a few times in previous videos, Women Who Run with the Wolves. So the bone woman is essentially this character which teaches us about, for sure, like the helpers along our path coming in a different way than we could have expected. And also how being in the dark woods, being in this state of the unknown, is also a catalyst for that renewal, the born again kind of thing. So get cozy, as I'm going to read you a short passage from this book now, speaking about the bone woman. And then I'm going to refer to a kind of different version of this story, more from northern Mexico. So let's do it. There is an old woman who lives in a hidden place that everyone knows in their souls, but few have ever seen. As in the fairy tales of Eastern Europe, she seems to wait for lost or wandering people and seekers to come to her place. She is circumspect, often hairy, always fat, and especially wishes to evade most company. She is both a crower and a cackler, generally having more animal sounds than human ones. I might say she lives among the rotten granite slopes in Tarahumara, Indian Territory, or that she is buried outside Phoenix near a well. Perhaps she will be seen traveling south to Monte Alban in a burnt-out car with the back window shot out. Or maybe she will be spotted standing by the highway near El Paso or riding shotgun with truckers to Morelia, Mexico, or walking to market above Oaxaca with strangely formed bows of firewood on her back. She calls herself by many names: La Huesera, Bone Woman, La Trapera, the Gatherer, and La Loba, Wolf Woman. The sole work of La Loba is the collecting of bones. She collects and preserves especially that which is in danger of being lost to the world. Her cave is filled with the bones of all manner of desert creatures, the deer, the rattlesnake, the crow, but her specialty is wolves. She creeps and crawls and sifts through the montañas, mountains, and arroyas, dry riverbeds, looking for wolf bones, and when she has assembled an entire skeleton, when the last bone is in place and the beautiful white sculpture of the creature is laid out before her, she sits by the fire and thinks about what song she will sing. And when she is sure, she stands over the criatura, raises her arms over it, and sings out. That is when the rib bones and the leg bones of the wolf begin to flesh out and the creature becomes furred. La Loba sings some more, and more of the creature comes into being. Its tail curls upward, shaggy and strong. And La Loba sings more, and the wolf creature begins to breathe. And still, La Loba sings so deeply that the floor of the desert shakes, and as she sings, the wolf opens its eyes, leaps up, and runs away down the canyon. Somewhere in its running, whether by the speed of its running or by splashing its way into a river, or by way of a ray of sunlight or moonlight hitting it right in the side, the wolf is suddenly transformed into a laughing woman who runs free toward the horizon. So remember, if you wander the desert and it is near sundown, and you are perhaps a little bit lost and certainly tired, that you are lucky, for La Loba may take a liking to you and show you something of the soul. So beautiful. And yeah, the singing, right? The soul voice and the cave, like the Earth Mother's womb, even this symbolism here. So just let that ruminate, let it do its thing for a second there. And I want to just bring your attention to a slightly different version of that so you can gain a sort of fuller picture of this this being, this character, all that she represents, right? So, slightly different version, here we go. There was a girl who married an old man who used her ill. He worked her hard, beat her, starved her, and cast her off when she gave him no children, leaving her in the desert with no food or water or shelter. The young wife hid in the meager shade of rocks by day when the sun was fierce. By night, she walked, crying, for she could not find her way home. The nights were cold. Wolves prowled the hills and carrion birds followed her. She was hungry, thirsty, weary, and she walked till she could go no further. Lying down by a wide, dry wash, she wrapped herself in her long white skirt. She said, "Let La Huesera," right, the bone woman, "take me, for I am spent." She died. Wild animals ate her flesh. Her spirit watched over the white, white bones and knew neither sorrow nor fear. The bones lay in that secret place until the moon was full once more, and then La Huesera came and put them all in her woven sack. The old woman took the bones up to her cave high in the mountain tops, then laid them out beside her fire. She sat and smoked. She smoked and thought. She smoked and she thought. Long, long time. And then she began to sing. Flesh to bone, flesh to bone, flesh to bone, the bone woman sang, and before too long the bones knit back together, covered in flesh. Where the girl had once been red and rough, she was now soft and smooth and plump. Her skin was as gold as daylight, and her hair as black as night. La Huesera sang and sang. She blew a puff of tobacco smoke. The young woman's eyes flew open, and she sat up and looked around her. The cave was empty. The ashes were cold. The old bone woman had disappeared. All that was left were tobacco seeds, and she put them in her pocket. She left the cave and started for home, following the rising sun. She knew she'd find her village walking this way, and so she did. She came upon her dwelling at last. The place was dark, deserted now. That old man has died, that poor wife has died. Come away from that place, the people said, for they did not recognize her. They did not recognize this lovely young woman who came to them out of the west. They gave her a name, a fine set of clothes, a new dwelling place, a goat, and a hen. They taught her human speech, for she had forgotten all that she knew. She planted La Huesera's seeds and tended the new plants carefully. In time, she married and gave her young husband many gold-skinned daughters and black-haired sons, and her children's children's children still grow tobacco in that village today. So this version was more from I think it was northern Mexico. So in both cases, and I just find them so beautiful, because you can really pull out so much symbolism and meaning there. But of course, these tales can be seen as a metaphor for these rites of passage and transformation, right? Because entering the dark woods, entering the unknown, be it the dark woods as the desert, whatever the symbolism is, but more the meta framing is the unknown, this is a traditional rite of passage in some sense. So the journey that we followed, for example, with the last one of the young woman who got thrown out into the desert, she surrendered, she died, and then got born again with the help of the bone woman. It parallels this ritual of death and rebirth, where she undergoes a symbolic kind of like twice born experience. And these are like quite traditionally shamanic rites of passages and initiations as well. She leaves her body, right? She then returns to it and finally becomes twice born, emerging from the cave, right, Earth Mother's womb, with a sacred gift for her people, which we can see symbolically with the tobacco seeds. Really potent. So any life change, right? Any calamity can trigger events that lead into the dark, that lead to the unknown. It doesn't require someone throwing you into a desert or leaving you to die in some dark woods. It's not that literal. Anything can. As I said before, a change of job, a change in relationship, a new home, a new country, right? It can also be when you start doing healing work and you're entering the unknown woods of what it actually means to discover who you truly are and to do the healing work, right? So yeah, like in traditional rites of passage tales, it's often our whole identity and our whole way of being that must learn, and that we must actually learn how to give up, right? In order to make it out of the woods, in order to make it to the new unfamiliar self that we left the old self to discover, and indeed to knit flesh and bone back together. Learning how also to stand in this sort of pure beingness, not wearing any masks, not wearing any clothes of this is my outfit because I know what I'm doing, like AKA like these are the roles that I've played and these are the skills that I have with these roles. There is this sort of sense of you are kind of standing out there naked. Pure beingness, no masks, no pretense, right? There's a vulnerability there. There's an openness there, right? So in various cultures, rites of passage stories have been crucial for marking life's transitions and guiding individuals through profound periods of change in their life. Okay, so there's even the stories of like Merlin and Odin who return from their trials enriched with gifts or knowledge. That's sort of where we're going to towards the end of these 4 weeks in the second section of 12 weeks. And in more modern sort of times, this whole concept, this whole ritual, this whole rite of passage, it provides frameworks for us to understand how to actually survive significant life changes, be it illness, loss, grief, or the examples I gave before. That entering the darkness and emerging from it really leads to personal growth and renewed purpose, right? So these tales and this understanding of how we enter this sort of unknown at various times in our life, it does show us how, you know, we really learn tools of how to make it through life with more strength and steadfastness and resilience, and how to make sense of all of life's ordeals and challenges, all right? And they illustrate that even after navigating through the darkness and the trials and all the stuff, discerning who is friend, discerning who is foe, figuring out how to attune to your intuition and gut and heart, that we return, we're born again, twice born, transformed, bringing back the new wisdom and vitality. We're not there yet. We first need to we first need to delve into the unknown with as much grace as possible. So the mystery, right? The unknown, the mysterious, so many names we can call this. In true Sophie style, I want to go into the etymology real quick of the mystery, right? What is the mystery? And etymologically, where did that word come from? So the word mystery and its cousin mystic, right? Both trace back to Latin and Greek words. Latin being mysterium and Greek being mysteria. And these words held the meaning of secrets, of hidden truths, of particularly religious or spiritual rites performed by secret orders with hidden significance, right? And those ones I just said were Latin, and the Greek one was maian, forgive my pronunciation, and that means to close or to shut. So cool, we get a sense of what that is, right? Very secret, kind of hidden, like occulted, but not quite. And in English, mystery, the word that we use today, was first used in a theological context, referring to sort of divine revelations and mystical truths, right? And we can also think of the mystery as deepest presence, right? The unknown leads us into that state of presence, because how else are we going to figure something out if we can't think back to previous ways of doing the thing? And we have to be present with what's here, acknowledge reality as it is, and then connect to that space within that can find a space of surrender and trust. And then we get the insight of what to do, what the next step is. So as I've alluded to, like this not knowing, right, this being surrounded by the unknown is implicitly what cultivates discernment. Who is friend, who is foe, and so on. But discernment isn't entirely decision making. Like, for sure, it's part of it, but in and of itself, discernment is the thing which leads to decision making, so to speak. A question that sort of can ignite a sense of understanding of what discernment is what encourages authenticity and what undermines it. Okay? The process of entering the darkness, the unfamiliar, is a process that, as I've said, is one that draws us away from the comfortable known, the comfortable familiar, and throws us into a sort of environment where we need to chart new territory. So in order to discern, right, we need to be able to separate from what attracts us from what is good for us. Okay? When we enter the unknown, you get the opportunity to sort of sense and learn about the unconscious sort of default programs that are running in the background. And those are the things which unconsciously draw you to certain things a lot of the time. Like, why am I attracted to this kind of person? Why am I attracted to these kinds of behaviors? Systemic stuff, right? That's where the family constellations comes in to understand these systemic patterns and so on. But of course, any other kind of like self-inquiry, self-reflective, psychotherapeutic healing work, like all plant medicine, there are so many ways to access this. Meditation, right? So that's where the discernment comes in. It's something that you need to learn on the job. We don't go into the dark woods knowing how to discern everything. There's a necessary sort of process of trial and error. And that's cool. That's all right. That's the point of it, you know? And so trusting the mystery is easier when we can lean into this fact that the point is we don't know how to do this. The point is that there is no map. So permission for it to be a little bit messy. Permission for me to, if I leave this job, I go to another one and it's not exactly the right one, but that leads me to the next thing, which is even a bit more right, which leads me to the next thing. Yeah, cool. Got it. You see? So this is really about being true to what our calls are and what is drawing us beyond ourselves. And we learn this by trusting the mystery. We learn this by being open to experience something that we haven't experienced before. Drawing back to this whole theme of the journey being discouraged to willing, think of a time in your life when you were really discouraged from investing a lot of time and care into a person or a life path, but that it is disillusioned, or you are left with a feeling of disappointment because you were betrayed, manipulated, it was totally not the right work for you, you were used and abused kind of thing. Or you realize that you invested all this time in a line of study that, or even work, that you awaken to the fact that this wasn't coming from your true self, this was coming from societal pressures or the wishes of your family, or whatever it is, right? That can lead, for sure, to a state of discouragement because you hadn't yet embodied discernment. You hadn't yet really known how to act upon that inkling of this isn't quite right. And that's okay. How can you learn if you didn't get the feedback of what happens when you don't listen to that feeling? Celebrate it as best as you can, right? Embrace failure. Okay, if you haven't watched that video, go watch that video. All of these videos kind of stack up on top of each other, so they're really helpful framing for the next one, right? And if you can remember from one of the previous videos, there was this quote from the book from Joe Dispenza of how nothing new is created from the known, right? Something new is created from the unknown. And this is really, for sure, the premise of the whole thing of the dark woods, the whole thing of trusting the mystery. right? Something is born, right? Something is birthed from newness, from the unknown, right? And something else which is really useful to know is this concept of blind love and mature love. And the dark woods, they show us where we have been in blind love, blind faith, right? And help us to attain mature love. I'm going to give you an example. Super basic, drawing particularly from family constellations. As kids, we are blindly in love, basically, with our parents. We blindly love them. We kind of have to for our survival, right? We don't question them. They are these all-seeing, all-knowing God-like beings, for all we know, our creators. And we just blindly accept them. It's fully unconditional, right? So these patterns can continue into adult life where new people come into our life and we blindly love them. You know, there's no questioning of if this actually is the way that I want to be treated or the way that I want to treat people. There's this blind love, right? And the mature love is cultivated from an embracing of the individual, of the self, not in a super narcissistic, selfish way, but in a recognition that I, as me, as this being in this life, doesn't want to just be the soup. I don't just want to be the water in the ocean. I want to also be the fish who has its own kind of pathway and its own destiny, right? And we could also put another layer on top of blind love and mature love, with blind love being fate and mature love being destiny. Another layer on top of that, blind love being ego and mature love being soul. And don't use this as concept that you can get all black and white thinking about. That's not the point of me, adding some layers on top of this. It's kind of just building it up, making it more textural, right? I'm particularly interested in even this layer of fate and destiny. Fate is kind of what you are led to unconsciously by the default patterns, like that's your fate. But the destiny is the one which requires conscious effort. It requires the cultivation of intuition. And how do you cultivate intuition? By being in the unknown and having to go within and access the parts of you that already know, because they do. In non-linear, no space, no time, which exists beyond the physical plane, right? It already does know. And you can access that. That's essentially what your intuition is. You're getting messages from the one, that one, let's say a different version of you or the greater field which holds all the answers. You're getting access to that. But you can't access that if you're paralyzed by fear, by doubts, by contractive limiting beliefs, right? By an over-mentalization of the thing. I've been there, my God, I've been so in my head, so governed by fear, so depressed, so angry, that I've forgotten what it was like to live a life that was more synchronistic, more intuitive, and more heart-based, where things kind of just made sense, even though I didn't have all the answers. And through all this, you cultivate willingness. Willingness to trust the unknown. Willingness to embrace the fact that you don't have all the answers, but that you will be given exactly what you need at every point of your life in order to move to the next phase. Whoa, that's full trust. And so there's a kind of, we could say that there's a sort of blind faith in that. Like, oh, Sophie, you're just telling me to blindly have faith that everything will work out for me. And I'm not entirely saying that. I'm kind of am saying that, but not entirely. What I am saying is that the one who understands that there is fate and there is destiny, there is blind love, there is mature love, there is the voice of ego and the voice of soul, let's say. The one who understands that if you don't cultivate a sort of conscious awareness that you'll be run by the default programs, if you do just blindly have blind faith for everything, then you can be absolutely tricked and manipulated and taken advantage of. And in which case, from a higher perspective, sure, you've been given the ingredients that you need in that circumstance to awaken to the fact that you're being manipulated and taken advantage of, and so on. More the energetic that I'm speaking of is for you, if you understand that you need to be aware of the parts of you who cloud that discernment of what is friend and what is foe, what is in your highest best good, what is not. Right? If you can understand that that exists, that all the answers are there, but there are things in the way of that, then there's a meta holding that does blindly kind of trust. But by that point, we shifted to mature because it's not ignorant. That's the real key of shifting from fate to destiny, from blind love to mature love, from no ability to discern to discerning, from discouraged to willing. There's an awareness that I'm going to be tested and I will see parts of me that I didn't want to see, and I've been running off programs, and I'm in a sort of line of work or in this friendship group which doesn't resonate with me, and then who am I? This question, who am I? And here's the journey. And in the dark woods, in that state of pure beingness, nakedness, yeah, you get to face that question head on. Who am I? Not who am I, not who I am with this mask on, this persona on, playing this role, wearing that robe of that archetype. No, who am I in the true sense of it? Cool. Even just that question is putting you in the state of trusting the mystery. You see, it's not always so direct. A lot of the time, this accessing the state of trust is indirect through being in more an inquisitive state, a questioning state. It's like when you're trying to relax, kind of drawing from the law of reversed effort, right? When you're trying to relax and you're telling yourself, relax, relax, relax. And surprise, surprise, you're not relaxed. But according to the law of reversed effort, try a little less hard. And then your attention goes to your breathing. And then you notice how you were breathing shallow, and then you start to breathe a little deeper. And what happens? You relax. You feel the similarity there? You see? Explicit, implicit, direct, indirect. So many layers. Oh my goodness, the layers are endless. The sort of key points here of how to really get into trusting the mystery is to accept the uncertainty as best as you can. Accept the fact that the unknown is supposed to be unknown. And that in and of itself is a crucial, non-negotiable element of growth and transformation. Recognizing that not everything can be understood or controlled. State of surrender, but not blindly. Otherwise, you're missing out of the opportunity to cultivate discernment. And you need discernment in order to have a healthy trust in the mystery. Practicing surrendering, right? Accessing that state of acceptance. You let go of the need for an immediate answer, right? An immediate outcome. And you allow yourself to be guided by that intuitive knowing, that inner wisdom, which you've always had access to, but maybe you didn't realize that you had access to it, or maybe distractions were in the way from you connecting to that golden thread connected to what is in your highest and best good, and how to actually receive the insight from that, or through that golden thread, right? To trust the mystery, it's a lot about staying present, right? So we've got accepting uncertainty, embracing and practicing surrendering, acceptance, and staying present. This is focusing on what is happening right now, acknowledging reality as it is. Easier said than done sometimes. Sometimes we think we're perceiving reality as it is, but if you remember the image from that NLP communications model, what we receive goes through meta programs, goes through filters, which leads to deletions, distortions, and so on. Then it feeds the story we've already got running in our minds, and we think we're being objective. Woo! Not that simple. But possible and very doable. And that's what being present assists with. You're present with what is happening right here, right now, without immediately attaching a story to it, a meaning to it, a connection to it, just observing it as objectively as you can, right? And then you're connecting to the ability to see the thing unfold, right? See the unfolding of the mystery before your eyes, rather than being overly concerned with what's going to happen next. Being in the now, witnessing the unfolding without massively future projecting. Okay, then now you're in a space to receive insight. Now you're in a space to go through that sort of rebirth process, because the stuff has fallen away. Like what we spoke about in the failure video, that the state of failure, quote unquote, was a very thing for J.K. Rowling in this example, but I mean for sure for myself, and I imagine for you too, that the space of failure stripped away the crap that wasn't actually necessary. Peeling off those layers, peeling off the masks, and there is a sort of nakedness there. There's pure beingness, the foundation, the skeletons, right? The bones, the thing that allows you to build again. There's a really nice quote here from Christine Walters Paintner, and it goes like this, quote, "Learn to love the holy darkness of mystery. Dance on the fertile edges of life, and let what you love ripen forth." End quote. Yeah. And remember, it's here, right? It's in the stories. It's in the myth. It's actually kind of like, it's there already. We can learn how to, for sure, like traverse the unknown with a little less freak out, let's say, when we can recognize in and of itself that it's a necessary part of the evolutionary process. So if you're at a time in your life where you're recognizing that you're about to enter a period of significant change or challenge, akin to kind of crossing into the mythological wood, the mythical woods, the unknown woods, the dark woods, great. First step is to acknowledge that. Acknowledge the period of change. Acknowledge the challenge. Acknowledge the fact that you don't know. Perfect. And in that, you can start to mentally, subconsciously prepare for the challenges that may arise, right? Knowing that these challenges will test your resilience and actually be the very thing that catalyzes your growth. Because there isn't any growth if everything's just dandy, then everything would be the same. There would be no point for different furniture or different cars or different kinds of meals. It would just be the same. There would just be one color. There wouldn't even be multiple humans. Okay? So start preparing for the challenge by just acknowledging that you're in a state or a period of the unknown. And then be open to receiving guidance. Be open to reconnecting with that part of you that already knows. And be open to guides, mentors, both real and symbolic, or real and unmanifest, right? who can offer wisdom and support and navigate and assist you to navigate these times. Remember that you're standing on the shoulders of your ancestors, and they too, of course, in their life experience trials and tribulations and challenges. So you can also more consciously connect to them and their wisdom. They want to help. They do. Embrace as best as you can the necessary decay. Embrace the winter, right? The letting go, the releasing of the parts of yourself that no longer serve you, and recognizing that this is making space for new growth, new opportunities, a new way of being that is actually the version of you that you wanted to call in. And right, doesn't that also assist you already to trust the mystery? Engage in the inner work. Dedicate time to introspection, to reflection, to meditation, to explore the depths of your psyche by confronting your fears, by even knowing, what am I afraid of? What am I afraid of? What is fear to me? And what happens to me when I experience fear? Super useful. Super useful to know what this relationship is. I know for myself, when fear is in my life, or I'm more governed by fear than I'd ideally like to be, it's almost like I can't see. It's like there's this, like a meshing in my vision. I feel a cloud in my head. I feel I can't even breathe properly. I feel a big cage around my heart. I feel heaviness in my body. I feel tingles up my spine. And from that place, I'm not open to new opportunities. I feel stuck. I feel imprisoned. I feel small. I feel there's no way out. I feel in black and white thinking. I feel totally unprepared for facing kinds of mystery. I want to know. I want certainty when I'm really fearful. So how does fear relate with you? Right? And a way to find more peace with this sort of inevitable period of time in our life of embracing the unknown, of going through the winter, all right, is the fact that as above, so below. Just as there is winter in the seeming outside, you also experience winter in a more symbolic and metaphysical version in various areas of your life, or multiple at the same time. You know, we're not all the same. It's going to be happening differently to each of us. But connect to Earth's rhythms, right? Tune in to her wisdom that she has to teach you, and recognize that the way that, for example, many plants survive in winter is they bring the energy from the extremities into the core, and that's how they survive. So as you enter the winter, the unknown, the unfamiliar, draw your attention back in from all the leakage of all the spreading yourself thin, bringing that in into your center, into your core. And then from that core, as we'll get into in the further weeks, then you can emanate the light. You can illuminate the path from within. So, your aligned action for this week is to answer those questions about fear and how fear relates to you. So, answer the question, what is fear to me? Right? So answer that in your journal. Answer the question, what happens to me when fear is present in my life? Okay, then answer that question. Like the examples I gave before, somatically, there are some really strong cues. More in my life, this sort of contraction, like grasping for a sense of certainty and security, totally not open to the unknown. right? Pain body, total pain body flare up, right? So answer that question. And then answer the question, how would I rather feel when fear is in my life? You could also answer the question in a different way of, how would I rather feel towards fear? Go with that one. How would I rather feel towards fear? And when we're speaking about fear, we're kind of implicitly speaking about the unfamiliar. Because in most cases, as soon as there's the unfamiliar, as soon as there's stepping outside of the comfort zone, there's fear. So in order to trust the mystery, we need to address our relationship to fear. And then we can address our relationship to, for sure, our capacity to discern. How do I know what is good for me and what is not good for me? In the next video, we're going to be kind of focusing more in on the state of confusion, right? And going more into the difference between this sort of voice of the ego and the voice of the soul. Knowing that in a lot of the time, it's not so clear as this is the ego, only the ego, and this is only the voice of soul. Like there's some intermingling there for sure. But in order to lean into the unknown, in order to harness the mystery and the state of confusion that inevitably arises, it's helpful to discern those two voices, which then assists us in discerning what is a default program and what is a more conscious program, what is fate, what is destiny. So, some juicy stuff to come. The dark woods. So mysterious, so mystical. And it's easy for me to say, don't be scared and don't worry about it. It's all part of the whole journey. And all of that is still true. But also hold space for the parts of yourself that are scared, that are grasping to hold on to the known, that have no idea how to trust the mystery and emerge from the woods into their new life. Just hold space for all of that, compassion to that, okay? The only way out is through. So, that's okay. Permission slip for it to be a little bit messy. Permission slip for you to not know. Sounds simple, right? But we need reminding of that. It's okay that I don't know all the answers. It's okay that I don't know how to do this right now. But that doesn't mean that I won't know. So actually, it's not I don't know, it's just I don't know yet. But I will know. And I will know. Alright, that's it for this video. Give this video a thumbs up if this is resonating for you. Share this with the people in your life you feel need to hear this, or just invite them to join you along with the journey. And thank you. Thank you for being here. It's super special to be able to guide you through this process and celebrate yourself for also committing to this. You know, this is an investment of your time and your energy. And even more so if you do the aligned actions and bring the concept into embodied wisdom, which is where the real growth and transformation happens. So, celebration for you. All right. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.